Yo, what's up everyone? This is Austin here with Austin Media Productions, and I'm going to be talking about 8 steps to develop new habits after this intro.
I'm moving to new habits with ease. Yes, I am. I'm moving to new habits with ease.
So step 1, have a goal in mind. You need to have a goal that you want to achieve if you stop this habit. Why do you want to stop a negative habit? You need to have a reason for changing your negative habit or traits, whatever it is. You need to have a reason for changing. Because if you don't have a reason, if you don't have a why, then being able to change that negative habit into a new habit is going to be a lot harder, because you're not going to have a strong enough reason, a strong enough why, a strong enough goal to stop that negative habit. Because then that negative habit will always conquer you. You need to ask yourself and really visualize and feel, how will you feel if you change this negative habit into a positive habit? What kind of emotion, what kind of person will you be? Will you become? How will you act? How will you talk? How will you stand? A lot of these things, you need to understand how are you going to feel once you achieve this goal. So again, you have to have a goal in mind. You have to have a strong enough reason, a strong enough why to overcome and conquer that negative habit so that it does not conquer you from achieving new and positive habit. And number 2, you need to focus on one habit. It might be more than one, but you need to at least focus on one habit, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with developing all these new habits all at once while trying to undo the negative habits that you've been holding on to and letting it become a part of your personality for so many years. For some, it might be 15 years. It might be less than that. It might be 20, it might be 30, it might be 40 years of the negative habit that you're all of a sudden going to just stop. And of course, you're not just going to stop it in one night. You know what, for some that might happen, and there have been many people that have stopped negative habits literally overnight. But for some, it takes time, it takes diligence, it takes discipline, it takes commitment. And like I said, step number 1, it takes having a really big why, or at least something that's impactful that will cause a strong enough emotion for you to keep going and to keep moving forward. You don't want to overwhelm yourself with too many changes. You got to take it one step at a time. Step 2, learn to be consistent with your new habits, as well as trying to focus on one habit and not overwhelm yourself with too many changes. And number 3, try to go at least 21 days to a full month with this new habit. The whole concept of it taking 21 days to develop a new habit, I think it actually came from Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s. He had actually released a book in 1960 where he mentioned that it takes 21 days to get used to like a new habit or a new way of doing things or looking at yourself. So you want to make sure that you can at least go 21 days to 30 days, because see, you have years of subconscious programming. With those years of subconscious programming, that's baggage. That is a lot of negative shit that you're holding on to. So as a result, you want to make sure that you can go as long as possible developing this new habit. And mainly, you got to be consistent. Like I've said, you got to be consistent for as long as possible with this new habit. But like I said, with Maxwell, and as many others have shown, you need to go at least 21 days to 30 days, and then 60 days and 90 days. And soon, man, it's going to become a part of who you are. It will be. It's going to become you. It's going to undo that subconscious programming. You need to make the subconscious conscious. Step 4, you need to have replacements for your old habit. Understand your cravings, your beliefs, what triggers you to go into that negative habit. A lot of the times we dive into our negative habits because it's giving us a dopamine hit, but a negative habit giving you a dopamine hit is actually not good for you. And so when you actually replace those negative habits with the positive habits, and you learn to actually have the replacements though, and you learn to understand what triggers you, and you learn to burn off the cravings for those habits of yours, you are allowing the natural serotonin and dopamine to take over. And when you can understand more of what causes you to feel a certain way and what causes you to go into those negative habits, you have a lot greater of a chance at overcoming them. So I would say, an exercise for that is learning to actually keep track of your negative habit. When do you do it? What time? How do you feel when you do it? What kind of mood are you in? And start keeping a track of that. Therefore, you can understand more of yourself and more of that habit. It's kind of like, if you were creating a character for a story. Either way, you just got to understand the ins and outs of your habits. That way you can then replace them with new and more positive habits. And number 5, don't compare your journey to someone else's. Now, this is something I know we all struggle with it, but I even had a tough time too, because I would read and hear people who had these just magical otherworldly meditations or just an otherworldly spiritual experience, and I'd be like, oh man, I really wish I could have had that. I have had them, just not in the way some people describe them. Some people may have changed a negative habit in less than 21 days. Some, it might take 30 days. It might take 60, 90 days. It can take longer. And so we might, we compare ourselves going, oh man, he or she did it in 10 days. It's taken me fucking 30 days just to change this negative habit. You know what? This just fucking sucks. It just isn't working. And many people then give up. Or then, you might get inspired after reading that, someone you admire or look up to, or, you don't even know, but they just told you that they changed a habit and it took them a year. Now you're back on the journey. You see, you just don't want to compare yourself to other people, especially when changing new habits. You just want to focus on your goal, more on you, and letting things go. Because the moment you place your focus outside of you, whether it be a person, place, or thing, you then give your power away. And that's one of the reasons why we have negative habits, is because we've been so conditioned and programmed to give our power away that we are constantly looking outside of ourselves for that fulfillment, for that happiness, and literally forgetting the oneness and divinity that already resides within. So when you're comparing yourself to the outer world, you're making a big fucking mistake, because what you end up doing is projecting what you don't want to see on the outer world, and it's then reflecting you back. And then what you end up doing, like I said, you give your power away, and when you do that, that disempowers you. So don't compare yourself to anybody else on this journey. And like I said, it's something I've had to learn. We all are learning that. But it's also something that we can overcome, and it's something we can change. Negative habit doesn't have to necessarily be a physical thing. At the end of the day, it's all mental. If you do something excessively, like smoking cigarettes or drinking too much alcohol, yes, that's a physical act, but still it all comes down to the mental. There's a reason behind why you're doing anything. So you at the real root of anything, changing a negative habit is really changing the negative thought. So once you get down to that root and you get rid of that negative thought form, then you can really start developing new habits. And that's how you can actually make quantum leaps. Like I said earlier, taking baby steps, but those baby steps can actually lead to quantum leaps, especially when you get down to the root. And once that happens, it's game changing, man. It's a game changer for life. Number 6, be prepared for any challenges. You don't want to get into this fearful state where you're anticipating the worst, but you got to understand, when you're changing a negative habit, it's not going to be smooth. Every day, it's not going to be a walk in the park like, fuck yeah, man, I got this shit. It might be like that for the first few days, maybe not. It might be like that later on, but you got to be prepared for when your ego, for when that fear, that resistance kicks in. Because it's going to kick in, and it's not going to want you to achieve this new habit. It might fool you. And I'm not saying, like I said, you don't want to place fear, and you don't want to anticipate the worst, but you got to understand that there are going to be challenges with letting go of negative habits. So step 7, be easy on yourself. Now, this is something I've had to learn a lot. So when things didn't go the way I planned or hoped or thought they would, I would beat myself up. If I made a mistake, I'd be like, oh my God, man, I'm gonna just beat myself up a lot for it. But my wife, Melissa, man, she totally helped me with this one. Just learning to be easy on myself, learning to have grace, learning to practice gratitude and self-compassion, because I wouldn't, man. I would just beat myself up a lot. Even though I understood not to beat myself up and I knew the ways and steps of how not to, I just wouldn't be as disciplined and committed, and it's taken a while, but that's huge. So you need to learn how to have compassion for yourself. You need to be easy on yourself, because changing a new habit changing an old habit and developing a new habit, new habits, you know, it's not always a walk in the park, and you're going to have your mistakes. You might make it 4 days into it, you might make it later on. No matter what though, you might beat yourself up and be like, fuck man, I didn't make any progress. You know, you don't want to be too hard on yourself. Even if you may have fallen back into an old habit, just bounce back, understand why, learn to be aware and mindful of the situation, of your thoughts, what caused you to do that, you know. But don't be so hard on yourself where you end up judging yourself so harshly you fall right back into it. That you don't want to do. You know, this is really part of the message and theme behind one of the songs I released a couple of months ago called Ease, which is all about moving into new habits with ease. I actually did it in a mantra style. The inspiration came from my wife because during that time I was actually moving into some new habits, and she now mentioned, you got to move into new habits with ease. And it just stuck. It was like a mantra I was using. Plus, you know, it turned it into a song and made it that way on purpose for a lot of people, because we need to develop new habits, and we need to develop new habits with ease. You got to be easy on yourself. Ease on yourself. So move into new habits with ease. Very important, man. It's very important. You don't want to be chaotic with moving into new habits. It just doesn't work. That's the old way of being. That's an old way of thinking. So if you want to move into new habits, you got to move into new habits with ease. And to move into new habits with ease, you got to do it on a regular basis. Not every so often, not every few days. Maybe once you actually are so accustomed and used to this new way of being that you can get away with doing it a few days. But honestly, starting out, you got to be consistent. And that brings us into step 8. Final step 8 is repeat. Keep repeating this new habit. I think I mentioned on step 2 about learning to be consistent. And that's part of, you know, and that's part of what you got to do with repeating. You got to be consistent day in, day out. You know, you got to really understand what happens if I don't change this habit into a new habit. What will happen? You got to be consistent day in and day out with this new habit. Eventually becomes who you are. You don't even have to think about it. Your subconscious programming will be undone and it will be reversed with a new way of thinking and a new way of being. A lot of our conscious thoughts are actually sometimes based in our subconscious thoughts that we just think is, hey, it's who we are, it's natural. When a lot of what we think and do is unnatural to who we really are, to our divinity. So that's why step 8 is very important, all of them really. But honestly, step 8, repeating this new habit consistently. That's what you got to do. So again, this is Austin here with Austin Media Productions. I really hope this video brought you some clarity, inspired you, empowered you, and motivated you to changing negative habits and developing new habits. And if you guys dig this video, please drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next video, y'all. Peace.
Hold up, cause I fear got you all froze up. And I'm bringing the heat, this is me, Austin. Aren't you glad that I showed up? I'm moving quick with ease, but I ain't gonna slow up.